Barbra Streisand was 23 years old and she already knew everything. At least that's what she thought. In 1965, she was the hottest thing in show business. Funny Girl had made her a Broadway sensation. People had become one of the biggest songs of the decade. Her voice, that incredible, once-in-a-generation voice, had critics comparing her to the greatest singers who ever lived. And Barbra believed them. Why wouldn't she? She had worked for this. She had clawed her way up from Brooklyn, from poverty, from a childhood where everyone told her she wasn't pretty enough, wasn't polished enough, wasn't right for stardom. She had proved them all wrong. Now she was on top of the world, and she wasn't afraid to say what she thought. The interview was for a major entertainment magazine. Barbra was promoting her upcoming television special, her third album, her meteoric rise. The journalist was asking all the usual questions, her process, her influences, her plans for the future. Then the journalist asked about other singers. What do you think of the current crop of entertainers? Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, Dean Martin? Barbra paused at the last name. Dean Martin. She had seen him perform once at a party in Los Angeles. He had strolled onto the stage with a drink in his hand, told some jokes, sung a few songs, and strolled off again. The audience had loved him. They had laughed at every joke, applauded every song, acted like they were witnessing something magical. But Barbra hadn't been impressed. She had watched him carefully, with her analytical eye, and she had seen what she thought was laziness. No vocal technique, no dramatic commitment, no visible effort at all. He just floated through it, like it didn't matter. To Barbra, who worked obsessively on every note, every breath, every gesture, this was offensive. This was everything wrong with show business. This was style over substance, charm over talent. So when the journalist asked about Dean Martin, Barbra said what she thought. Dean Martin? He's overrated. Honestly, I don't understand the appeal. He's coasting on charm. Anyone can do what he does. He doesn't push himself. He doesn't challenge himself. He just shows up and smiles and everyone acts like he's some kind of genius. She shrugged. I mean, he's fine. He's entertaining. But great? No. Great takes work. Great takes sacrifice. Dean Martin just looks like he's having a good time. That's not artistry. That's just performing. The journalist scribbled furiously. This was gold. Barbra Streisand, the new queen of show business, taking shots at Dean Martin, the king of cool. This would sell magazines. Would you say that to his face? The journalist asked. Barbra didn't hesitate. Absolutely. I believe in honesty. If he asked me what I thought, I'd tell him exactly what I just told you. The interview was published 2 weeks later. The headline read, Streisand calls Dean Martin overrated. Anyone can do what he does. The reaction was immediate and intense. Dean Martin's fans were furious. Letters poured into the magazine defending their idol, attacking this arrogant young woman who thought she knew better than audiences who had loved Dean for 20 years. Other entertainers weighed in. Some defended Barbra's right to her opinion. Others criticized her for attacking a colleague in public. The whole thing became a minor scandal, the kind that Hollywood loves. Young star versus old star, new generation versus established order. Everyone waited for Dean Martin's response. And waited. And waited. Dean Martin said nothing. No angry statement to the press. No cutting remarks in interviews. No public defense of his talent or his legacy. Just silence. Some people interpreted this as weakness. See? He can't defend himself because he knows she's right. Others saw it as dignity. Dean Martin is too classy to engage with this nonsense. But those who knew Dean understood something else entirely. Dean Martin didn't respond because Dean Martin genuinely didn't care. He had been criticized before, praised before, analyzed before. None of it affected him. He had learned long ago that other people's opinions were their business, not his. But that didn't mean he wasn't paying attention. 2 weeks after the article was published, Barbra Streisand received a package. It arrived at her apartment in New York, delivered by a courier. There was no return address, just her name written in elegant handwriting on the front. She opened it carefully. Inside was a vinyl record. Dean Martin's latest album, Everybody Loves Somebody, one of the biggest albums of 1964. The title track had knocked the Beatles off the top of the charts. There was a note tucked into the sleeve. Barbra pulled it out and read, "Dear Miss Streisand, I read your interview. You're right. Anyone can do what I do. I've never claimed otherwise. But not everyone can do what you do. That voice of yours is something special. I mean it. I've been in this business for 25 years and I've heard a lot of singers. You're the real deal. Keep singing, kid. Don't let anyone, including me, slow you down. I hope you enjoy the record. Track 7 is my favorite. I think you might like it too. Best, Dean." Barbra stared at the note. She read it again, and again. She had prepared herself for anger, for retaliation, for some cutting remark that would put her in her place. That was how it worked in show business. You attacked someone, they attacked you back, and the cycle continued forever. But this wasn't an attack. This was kindness. She had called him overrated. She had said anyone could do what he does. She had dismissed his entire career in a few careless sentences. And he had responded by complimenting her, by encouraging her, by sending her his album like a gift from a colleague, not a weapon from an enemy. Barbra sat down heavily on her couch. The note trembled in her hand. She put the record on her turntable and lowered the needle. Track 7. She didn't know what it was. She hadn't paid much attention to Dean Martin's catalog. The song began. A simple arrangement, piano and strings, and then Dean's voice, warm and intimate, singing about love and loss and the passage of time. Barbra listened, really listened, for the first time, and she heard something she had missed before, something beneath the casual delivery, beneath the easy charm. There was pain in that voice, real pain, the kind of pain that comes from living, from losing, from carrying wounds that never fully heal. Dean Martin wasn't coasting. He was doing something far more difficult. He was making it look easy. He was taking all the struggle, all the technique, all the years of practice, and hiding it so completely that the audience only saw the result, only felt the emotion. That wasn't laziness. That was mastery. Barbra started crying. She cried because she had been wrong. She cried because she had been cruel. She cried because a man she had publicly humiliated had responded with grace she didn't deserve. And she cried because she realized something about herself that she didn't like. She had been so focused on proving her own worth that she had torn down someone else's. She had confused confidence with arrogance, honesty with cruelty. She wanted to call him, to apologize, to take back every word she had said. But she didn't know his number. She didn't know anyone who knew his number. And she was afraid that if she reached out, she would make things worse. That she had already done too much damage. So she kept the note. She folded it carefully and put it in a box with her most precious possessions. Letters from her mother, photographs from her childhood, programs from her early performances. And she made herself a promise. Someday when the time was right, she would make this right. The years passed. Barbra Streisand's career soared to heights even she hadn't imagined. Funny Girl became a movie. The Way We Were became a classic. She won Oscars, Grammys, Emmys. She became one of the most successful entertainers in history. But she never forgot the note, and she never forgot the lesson it taught her. Whenever she was tempted to criticize another performer, she thought of Dean Martin. Whenever she was tempted to dismiss someone's work as lesser than hers, she remembered Track 7. Whenever her ego threatened to run away with her, she pulled out that folded piece of paper and read those words again. Not everyone can do what you do. He had given her that compliment when he had every right to attack her. He had lifted her up when she had tried to tear him down. He had shown her what grace looked like. She watched Dean Martin's career from a distance. She saw him on television, in movies, in Las Vegas. She saw him deal with tragedy, his son's death in 1987, a loss that seemed to break something inside him. She saw him retreat from public life, become a ghost, fade from the spotlight he had once commanded. And she wanted to reach out. Every year, she wanted to reach out. But something always stopped her. Work, life, fear. The right moment never seemed to come. Then, on Christmas Day 1995, Dean Martin died. Barbra heard the news and felt something crack inside her chest. She had waited too long. She had missed her chance. 30 years of wanting to apologize. And now he was gone. She sat in her home that Christmas night, alone with her regrets, holding the note that had changed her life. The paper was yellowed now, the creases worn from being folded and unfolded so many times. But the words were still clear. "Keep singing, kid. You're the real deal." She had never told anyone about the note. It was her private shame, her private lesson, her private treasure. She had kept Dean Martin's kindness to herself for 3 decades. But now he was dead. And she realized that keeping it private was another form of cowardice, another way of avoiding the apology she owed him. If she couldn't apologize to Dean, she could at least apologize to the world. She could tell people who Dean Martin really was. She could set the record straight. 6 months later, Barbra Streisand was performing at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles. A benefit concert, sold out, thousands of people in attendance. The who's who of Hollywood. She had planned a standard set list. The hits, the favorites, the songs everyone came to hear. But halfway through the concert, she stopped. "I want to tell you a story," she said into the microphone. "A story I've never told anyone." The audience fell silent. "In 1965, I was 23 years old and I thought I knew everything." She laughed softly, bitterly. "I gave an interview to a magazine. They asked me about other singers. And when they asked about Dean Martin, I said something cruel. I said he was overrated. I said anyone could do what he does. I was young and arrogant, and I thought honesty meant being harsh." She paused. The interview was published. Everyone waited for Dean to respond, to fight back, to say something cutting about this young upstart who had dared to criticize him. Another pause. He didn't. Instead, he sent me his album. And a note. Barbra's voice cracked. The note said, "It said that I was right. Anyone can do what he does. But not everyone can do what I do." He complimented my voice. He encouraged me to keep singing. He called me the real deal. Tears were streaming down her face now. I had attacked him in public, in front of millions of people. And he responded with kindness, with generosity, with a grace I didn't deserve and have never forgotten. She wiped her eyes. "I kept that note for 30 years. I read it whenever I needed to remember what true class looks like. I pulled it out whenever my ego got too big, whenever I was tempted to tear someone else down to make myself feel better." She looked out at the audience. "Dean Martin died last Christmas, and I never got to apologize to him. I never got to tell him what his note meant to me. I never got to thank him for showing me, at 23 years old, that greatness doesn't need to defend itself, that the truly great can afford to be kind." She took a deep breath. "So I'm apologizing now. To his memory, to his family, to everyone who loved him." Her voice was strong now, clear and certain. "I was wrong about Dean Martin. He wasn't overrated. He was underrated, if anything. What he did, making it look effortless, making pain look like pleasure, making audiences feel instead of think, that's the hardest thing in the world. That's mastery. And I was too young and too stupid to see it." She looked directly into the spotlight as if speaking to someone beyond it. "Dean, I'm sorry. 30 years too late. But I'm sorry. You taught me something that night with your note. You taught me that cruelty is easy, and kindness is hard. You taught me that true confidence doesn't need to tear others down. You taught me that the measure of a person isn't how they respond to praise, but how they respond to attack." She smiled through her tears. "You responded to my attack with love, and I have tried for 30 years to be worthy of that love." She lifted her chin. "This next song is for you, Dean, wherever you are. I hope you can hear it. I hope you know that the arrogant young woman who called you overrated has spent her whole life trying to learn from your example. She nodded to the conductor. And then Barbra Streisand, one of the greatest voices in music history, sang Dean Martin's signature song. Everybody loves somebody. She didn't try to imitate him. She didn't try to improve on him. She just sang it simply, honestly, with all the emotion she had held inside for 30 years. The audience was weeping. So were the musicians. So was Barbra. When the song ended, the applause went on for 5 full minutes. The next day, the story was everywhere. Barbra Streisand's apology to Dean Martin. The note she had kept for 30 years. The lesson she had learned about grace and kindness. Dean Martin's daughter, Gina, saw the concert on television. She called Barbra the next morning. "Miss Streisand, I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? I should be thanking you. I should be apologizing to you." "No. You gave my father something he would have valued more than any apology. You told the world who he really was." Barbra was quiet. "My father never talked about that note," Gina continued. "I didn't know about it until last night, but it doesn't surprise me. That was who he was. He never held grudges. He never fought back when people attacked him. He just let it go. And somehow, that made him stronger." "He was extraordinary," Barbra said. "He was. And you helped people see that last night. The man behind the image. The kindness behind the cool. That's a gift, Miss Streisand. That's a gift to our family and to everyone who loved him." After she hung up, Barbra sat for a long time holding the phone. She thought about Dean Martin, about the man who had every right to destroy her and chose to lift her up instead, about the lesson that had taken her 30 years to fully understand. She thought about all the times she had been tempted to be cruel since then, and hadn't been. All the times she had chosen kindness instead of cutting remarks, encouragement instead of criticism. All the ways that one note had shaped who she became. Dean Martin never knew any of it. He sent that note and moved on with his life, probably forgetting about it within a week. He didn't send it to teach her a lesson or to make her feel guilty or to prove he was a better person. He sent it because that's who he was. Kind, generous, graceful. And now the world knew. Thanks to Barbra's confession, thanks to her public apology, the world knew that Dean Martin was more than the king of cool. He was a man who responded to hatred with love. A man who lifted up those who tried to tear him down. A man who understood that true greatness doesn't need to defend itself. That's Dean Martin's real legacy. Not the songs, not the movies, not the television shows. The legacy is the kindness, the grace, the simple human decency that he showed again and again to people who didn't deserve it. Barbra Streisand learned that lesson at 23 years old. She spent the rest of her life trying to live up to it. And on a night in 1996, in front of thousands of people, she finally paid it forward. She took the kindness Dean had shown her and shared it with the world. That's how kindness works. It doesn't die with the person who gave it. It lives on, in the people who received it, who pass it on to others, who pass it on to others still. Dean Martin sent a note to an arrogant young woman in 1965. 30 years later, that woman told the world about it. And now, decades after both of them are gone, the story continues to teach people what grace looks like. Not everyone can do what Dean Martin did, but everyone can try.